production of Ruckus is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, the Hartwig family, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly. Our topics this time: who will judge the judges? Judging the news media and presidential politics, and politics may block the streetcars. But we start with our Newsmaker segment and welcome the man who will become District Attorney of Wyandotte County in 2017. Mark Dupree doesn't have to run in November. He won the August Democratic primary, and more often than not, that's all it takes in KCK and Wyandotte County. Dupree, a practicing attorney and minister, defeated longtime incumbent Jerry Gorman, who's held the position since 2005. Dupree will inherit at least two high-profile cases when he takes office. Both involve the killings of Kansas City, Kansas police officers. We are pleased to welcome Mark Dupree, a fellow Wyandotte Countyan, to Ruckus. Welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us, and congratulations on your victory.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate being here.
You won against someone who was the incumbent, had been in office for a decade or more. Why do you think you won? Are you an outsider in a year of political outsiders doing well?
Well, I think I'm a person who is for the people, a person who's for the community, and I think the community there in Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County, the folks were just ready for change. They were ready for progressive thinker and someone who's willing to tackle the issues that may be going on.
What kind of things will change when you become district attorney?
We will definitely be more outgoing, more of a progressive, proactive rather than reactive office. One of the major things that we will create in the Wyandotte County District Attorney's Office is the Community Prosecutors Unit. I'm a major advocate of being proactive, and that being more involved with the community and the folks that are in the community, because you cannot tackle crime or injustice in any community without the support and the help side by side of not just the police officers in the district attorney's office, but the community and the people in that community. And I think that by voting me in, they are absolutely willing to take on that task.
Well, if you looked at Wyandotte County the last couple of weeks, you would think it was on a shooting rampage and a homicide rampage. Is that commonplace, do you think?
I don't believe it's common at all. In fact, I believe that the community is outraged at it, and they're
should be.
And should be. It is not an everyday situation, and there are many families that are hurting right now, and having gone to several candlelight vigils within the last couple weeks and talking with multiple families, people are outraged and they want something different, and they are lining up side by side with our officers who are doing their best to not just wait until crime happens and then react, but whatever we can do to cut this thing off before it occurs and be proactive, which means finding out who these criminals are and stopping them before another life is lost.
You and I were discussing off the air the fact that there's not a lot of media coverage of Kansas City, Kansas, except when there are homicides or major fires, and certainly you're inheriting, as I mentioned in the introduction, two high-profile cases, two KCK police officers being shot, killed.
Yes.
Will you be prosecuting those cases in court?
Yes, I'll be taking the lead on both of those cases. I will have a second chair, potentially a third chair as well, assisting me, but I'll be leading the fight on both of those cases. What happened to Detective Lancaster and Captain Milton was a tragedy, not just for our officers, but for the entire community. And it will absolutely be fought for justice on their behalf.
You will have no Republican opponent in the November election, so by winning the primary, as I mentioned in the introduction to the program, you're winning the election. And I'm sure you're glad that you don't have to go through a November campaign, but as someone, as I know you are, interested in the future of Wyandotte County, wouldn't the citizenship of the community, the residents, be better served by an active Republican Party so that they could decide between you and your Republican opponent in November?
Well, I'll tell you, I think the more folks that can get involved in the Wyandotte County arena concerning voting and politics would be better. And I do agree that it is my hope that more folks, both Republican, Democrat, liberal, the like, would all get more involved. But I must tell you, Mike, I am absolutely excited, and I'm not pushing anyone to jump in before November.
I'll wrap this up by pointing out that you are a minister. Do you still preach?
I still preach.
At the Grace Tabernacle, right?
Yes, Grace Tabernacle Church.
Is there any conflict in your mind, internal or external, about being the DA and being a clergyman?
Absolutely not. I am a strong believer that the very fundamental essence of justice can be found in the biblical principles, and it is something that is not just spoke about, it's something that's lived. And so I think in pursuing justice, which is the foundation of the district attorney's office, it will absolutely align with my biblical beliefs. And here's the reality, and one of the things that I continue to say while I was on the campaign trail, those who are committing crime in Wyandotte County will be held accountable, and they will go to prison and they will be dealt with. Now, my clergy side, as I send them, I will say a prayer for them.
You're not going to forgive them automatically. We got to stop there. Thank you very much for coming in. It's a pleasure to meet you.
By all means, thanks for the opportunity.
There you have the future DA of Wyandotte County, Mark Dupree. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Lisa Johnston is a political consultant and columnist. Gwen Grant is president and CEO of the Urban League in Kansas City. Ron Freeman is a former GOP official in Kansas, now a motivational speaker, and eminent attorney Steve Marakian is with the law firm of Worsh, Hobbs, and Marakian. Good to see all of you. It's good to be back with Ruckus after a few weeks away. Kansas voters won't be deciding just the future of the state legislature when they cast ballots on November the 8th. They will also play a role in determining the future of the state Supreme Court. 5 of the 7 justices will be on the ballot, and voters will be asked if they should be retained. Only one of the 5, Caleb Stegall, is an appointee of the current governor. Many Republicans are unhappy with this court, as is Governor Sam Brownback, over its school finance decisions. Jumping into the battle is the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. President and CEO Joe Reardon, a Democrat and former mayor of Kansas City, Kansas, says the active effort to unseat 4 of the 5 Supreme Court justices this fall is unprecedented and worrisome. The chamber believes politics has no place in the selection and retention of members of the Kansas judiciary. Really? No politics in judicial appointments? Lisa?
Well, if we're honest, I think we all have to admit that there are always politics, probably in everything, and certainly judicial appointments are no exception to that. Now, obviously, you can look over the years. President Reagan appointed Justice Scalia, President Clinton appointed Justice Ginsburg, and you know, you get different kinds of appointments from different leaders. I think in Kansas, they try to do what they can. They have the nominating commission. They try to have a more objective process, if you will. But always leaders probably have their preferences. Now, having said that, I disagree with those who criticize the court on the education issue. They have an obligation, if they do not feel it's meeting the constitutional requirement of being suitable, to take that up. And when we look at the details in terms of base aid per student, when you look back to '92, it was at $3,600 per pupil. And the last time we used the formula, it was $3,800, just a little bit over that. And the block grant has essentially maintained that funding. So if you had increased the funding with inflation over time, base aid would have been $6,200. Now, you can make the argument it was too high in '92, but there is a legitimate question here about suitability.
Ron, you could make the argument that that decision ought to be made by the elected officials, not the unelected court.
Well, yeah, I think the bigger thing here is that they've upset the electorate. Nobody said that the court was impenetrable, because if you can be recalled, you can be recalled. This is the way it is.
Well, but this is something that takes place regularly on the ballot in Kansas. This is not the result of a campaign to oust these people. That has followed the fact that this retention election is scheduled and regularly.
And that's the point. All this uproar about how awful it is that there would be political opposition or an attempt to non-retain is absurd. We have a system in Kansas that the voters have chosen, and many states have it, where our judges are not appointed for life. So if they have to be retained, the problem we have most times is people go in to vote and they say, I don't know any of these judges. I know nothing about them. So if you want to oppose retention, get out and campaign to oppose retention. There's nothing at all sinister or wrong with that. If the judges are retained, Great. If they're not retained, that's the will of the people. But there's no point of having retention elections if when you oppose a judge, you're accused as being anti-judiciary. That's not the case.
One of the articles I read, and I think all of you saw, the writer was saying this is tough for people who want to vote because they have to remember all these names. But they really don't. You just have to remember one name, and we're going to put up the list of people who are going to be on the ballot. The 4 that are being criticized by the Republican contingent are Carol Beyer, Dan Biles, Marla Lukert, and Chief Justice Lawton Nuss. The other person on the ballot is Caleb Stegall. So if you're a big Brownback fan and you hate the court, you vote to retain Caleb Stegall and get rid of the others. If you're not, you think things are going fine, like Lisa said they are, then you retain the 4,
Or if you're
and
upset
you do
about
what
the
you
Carr-
want to do with
if you're upset
Stegall.
about the Carr
But-
brothers, you vote the 4 out.
But I think
If you're upset about
there's
the Carr
another
brothers, don't
issue
forget
that
that
needs
part.
to be addressed. So, Steve, you're right that if you have judges on the ballot and that's the process, and to vote to retain or remove a judge, that's fine. But I think it's important for the electorate to understand the role and a judge should only be recalled based on merit, not politics.
This is not a
And
recall.
so, no.
Well, the Carr brothers' decision was significant in the
It's
eyes of
okay.
Kansas, right?
Excuse me.
Yeah,
It's
it was.
okay for, I mean, we understand that there's political, that politics is involved in the governor or the president deciding whom they will appoint to the judiciary. But retaining those judges should be based on the merit of those jurists and not
agree.
the
I
politics
agree.
or
And
their
there's no-
opinions or their political
There's
views.
no judge
We're
who's
on a
perfect.
slippery slope when we start
Well,
recalling
and-
people who are not
if you
conservative
oppose-
enough.
I agree.
Have
If you-
they made mistakes? Have they created? Have they conducted themselves outside of the confines of the law? No, they have not.
That would be a recall. This is not a recall. This is
Yeah,
like any
this-
other election.
this
we
happens
don't- if we-
regularly.
If we in the federal judiciary, for example, there's no retention elections.
that's right.
In the states, many states have decided we don't want our judges to be there permanently. We'll have retention. If you're going to have retention, which is entirely different than recall, there's no misconduct here. There's no accusation of impropriety by these judges. If the electorate does not like the way they're ruling on cases, for whatever reason, they have the right to vote not to retain.
That's
all
true.
this is
But
about.
we shouldn't have campaigning
I'm sorry.
against judges on political bases.
I'm sorry, but we're way over time. I got to stop you there. I will end by saying 6 of the 7 justices now on the court were appointed by governors other than Sam Brownback, and 4 of them were appointed by Kathleen Sebelius. Kansas City Star columnist and ruckus defector Yale Abahaka sees a feud developing between factions on the city council over streetcar expansion. One group wants to move ahead and seek voter approval to extend the line, despite the plan to also ask for more tax money, $800 million in bonds for infrastructure improvements next spring. Now, Yale points out the bond election would be in April and the streetcar question would go to voters next summer. Also, the bond issue would be decided by the entire city, streetcar question by voters in the geographic area affected by the expansion. Some worry that 2 efforts to increase taxes just months apart would dampen voter support. But it seems both Yale and Mayor Sly James disagree. To quote the mayor, as Yale does in his column, Kansas City can walk and chew gum at the same time. So, Gwen, does that quote answer any questions or concerns you might have about these elections?
Yeah, I agree with the mayor and Yale. Kansas City can walk and chew gum both at the same time. And I think to imply that voters cannot make decisions because, oh my God, there are too many options on the ballot is totally ridiculous. When we go to the polls on November 8th, voters will have to elect the president, and there'll be several other options on that ticket, and we show up and vote. We do our job consistently time after time. I think the issue here is really one of what do people want? I mean, and so if I want to pass streetcar expansion, then I need to educate the electorate so that they, in a way that will help them to make an informed decision and hopefully a decision that leans towards what I want to have happen.
Well, Lisa, is there some merit to concern about 2 elections being close together, both of which would be expensive ones for Kansas City?
To some extent. I mean, I think Gwen is right in that the voters can understand the issues.
Can walk and chew gum.
Yeah, they can walk and chew gum, but at the same time, this is rather like asking your boss for a raise twice in the same year. It's like, give me money for this, now give me money for this. And I do think that if if there is a desire for the measures to be successful, there could be a concern and there could be a bit of backlash from voters saying, you've asked me once, now you're asking again. So I think they could have some difficulties.
Ron, do you think this push for streetcar expansion so quickly after the creation of the downtown starter line might be concerned that after a while enthusiasm for the streetcars will disappear or be modified?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think it's strike while the iron's hot. People are excited about it. It's going well, so let's throw more money at it, and I don't think that's wise, first of all. But the other part is, if you're going to do $800 million here and then $200 million here, you're talking $1 billion, and the public's probably going to say, you know what, we're not going to go there. And I think that's part of the problem from a strategic standpoint on both sides.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the Clay Chastain light rail plan is going to be on the ballot, is it not, in November? A $2 billion light rail enterprise, if it passes, the question about streetcars will be obviated, I would say.
Well, the Chastain plan is not going to pass. Gwen is correct in that,
prognostication.
In that you know, people can make these decisions. I am concerned, however, that this is not good timing, and I would rather have seen this in some fashion be combined, because I'm very concerned right now that people are not going to want to vote to approve the bond issue and then 2 months later vote to approve additional funding for streetcars, which right now seem to be doing very well, but you know, nobody's paying for that. It's free riding. Yeah. And to develop this all the way up through down Main like they want to, or the extended down Main, it's going to cost a lot of money, and people are going to have to really, as Gwen said, they're really going to have to understand and be sold on the idea this is good. I don't think it's going to pass. And I think it would pass if it was just sort of a standalone thing in this one election. I'm very concerned about the timing.
Well, you say it's not being paid for. It is being paid for.
No, I mean,
it's
people
being
aren't
paid
paid
for
to ride
by taxes in the district. We don't know, do we, if the new plan, if the streetcar expansion plan would include free rides like the downtown one does?
I don't know that. I do believe it will be just an expansion of that tax district. So those people living along the corridor will be the ones who would have to approve that tax.
Right.
So it's when you talk about that election,
and people pay taxes when they shop in that area, like the plaza, for example.
Right.
Quickly about the other election, infrastructure repairs and maintenance. Do you think there will be great support for that? I can't imagine there won't be.
I hope there will be, and I hope the council and the people who are so forth don't take it for granted. In my view, where I living in Kansas City, and I work here, and I have a vested interest in this, I think the infrastructure development is far more important to me than expanding that streetcar line. I like the streetcar, I like the idea. I don't like the idea of expanding it right now. I think it's too soon to see. And if I had to choose, were I a taxpayer in Kansas City, Missouri, and I am because of my earnings tax, okay,
sure,
but I can't vote.
And that's a lot of money.
I would vote for the infrastructure in a heartbeat. I would probably not vote to tax myself additionally to expand the streetcar.
Your earnings tax would probably pay for much of the streetcar.
I could buy the streetcar. Easily.
Gwen, wrap this up. Over the years, critics have said the city doesn't do a very good job of maintaining infrastructure, that they have a program of deferred maintenance and they defer it way too long. Do you think that's been true?
I think that's true, yeah, and I'd like to see this bond package pass so we can get get it taken care of.
All right. According to Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Michael Goodwin, Donald Trump is not just running against Hillary Clinton for president, he's also running against CBS, NBC, ABC, and major papers like the New York Times and Washington Post. Calling it the complete collapse of American journalism as we know it, Goodwin says major media are working hand in hand with the Clinton campaign to destroy Donald Trump's chances of winning. Goodwin alleges the broadcast networks and the major papers have abandoned any pretense of fair play, adding their fierce determination has no precedent. Well, I think all of us here at the table have seen our share of presidential campaigns. So let me start with Steve Merakian. Do you think media coverage this year is dramatically different or any different than we've seen in years gone by?
I think the goal is unchanged. It's been the goal since about the late 60s, maybe before that, of media, both print and other media, to try to elect Democrats, to foster an agenda that goes along with essentially the view of most journalists, and they self-identify as liberals or progressives. There's no question about that. The means, however, to me, the message, I think, is different. Here, this year, and we've always had attacks, but if you remember the two Obama campaigns, the message was basically focusing on policy, hope and change, various kinds of things. This man can do certain things. His policies will be good. This time, it's not a message, or excuse me, it's not policies. There's no focus on the question of what policies Hillary Clinton would follow. It's simply a matter of we've decided as a media, we've decided we're going to demonize the candidate, and we're going to take every word he says and we're going to mock it, and then we're going to call him every form of buzzword. We're going to call him a racist, a bigot, a xenophobe, a homophobe, a misogynist. We're going to do all of that with no factual basis. We're just going to throw those things out there and make you believe he's a madman. So forget the policy issues. Let's focus our message on him as a madman.
So why
that, to me, is different.
I
think it's bad.
Why did you leave out demagogue?
Well, I couldn't pronounce that
All
very
right,
well.
quickly, Ron, your reaction. Have you seen coverage like this in the past?
No,
or is
I
this
think it's a
totally
whole new level. But
unprecedented?
part of it's Donald Trump's personality, too.
Yeah.
He fights back. And so they got to shut him down. So, yeah, it's very aggressive.
And he
what
says
they're doing
stupid
for him.
things.
I want to show a couple of quotes from this Goodwin column, and then I'll ask Lisa and then Gwen to react. Here's the first one, and this is from Goodwin's column. Indeed, no foreign enemy, no terror group, no native criminal gang suffers the daily beating that Trump does. The mad mullahs of Iran who call America the great Satan and vow to wipe Israel off the map are treated gently by comparison. Is that true, Lisa?
Well, I think he has a point. I might not go so far as to say what he did, but in my view, and I've said this many times in recent years, news is not news anymore in the way that it used to be. It's more news-based entertainment, and ratings tend to be the focus. And regarding Donald Trump, the irony is that the news media gave him scads of coverage because it was good for their ratings. And so during the primary, they would cover him, and now they're flipping and covering him in a negative way.
All right, quote number 2 from the Goodwin column for Lisa, or for Gwen. Liberal bias in journalism is often baked into the cake. The traditional ethos of comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable leads to demands that government solve every problem. Favoring big government then becomes routine among most journalists, especially young ones. Is that right, Gwen?
No, I don't agree with either of those quotes. What I want to say something about is Steve's remarks about Donald Trump. Basically, the media puts a spotlight on this candidate, and he delivers with his behavior, with his commentary, with his rhetoric. He has defined himself as all of those things that you just listed. And so you blame the media because they happen to have the camera rolling.
Give me one fact to
Happen to
support
have
that.
the camera
Give me one
rolling
fact to support
when
that.
he spews racist,
we're
bigoted,
running out here,
commentary.
but we
give me even
Things
one
when
racist
he-
comment
When
he's
he's
made.
going to build a wall to keep
That's
not
people
racist.
of
Does
color
anybody
out of
listen
this
to me?
country.
No,
when
we've
he
got to
says
stop here.
Wow.
you know,
That's
so
the point.
seriously,
There we go.
his comments about
There it is,
women,
right
his
there.
comments
we wanted to
about
talk
African
about the-
Americans,
There's our
about
evidence.
immigrants, about
We wanted to
Latinos,
talk about the
seriously.
Commander-in-Chief Forum, but sadly there's no time to do that. And now we head to the soapbox for Roast and Toast, where the Ruckettes offer commendation or condemnation to people and events in the news. That was good, wasn't it? Let's start with Ron.
Well, and to tame things down here a little bit, we'll make it simple. I want to toast the Kansas Jayhawks football program and Coach Beatty, who found their first win since 2014, which seems like a small thing, but nonetheless, a 55-6 win. That's pretty impressive. Way to go, Jayhawks.
Hey, Lisa.
My roast is for WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, who continues to dangle the notion that he has important information regarding the presidential race. His timing in releasing information about the DNC and the Democratic primary was exceedingly poor, in that nothing could be done to improve the process. So given that early voting starts late in September in many months, American people have a right to consider any and all information that's important. And so Mr. Assange needs to let the cat out of the bag now.
Mr. Marakian.
I toast the president for defending the right of 49er quarterback Colin Kaepernick to protest supposed American oppression of minorities by refusing to stand during the national anthem. The president told the Chinese recently, in the U.S., free speech is an honored right. In essence, what the president said is, unlike you, we don't kill protesters. Kaepernick is a pampered athlete who knows nothing of true oppression. He knows nothing of service of country. But here he has the freedom to be ignorant. As me Irish friends would say, you're a bit of a gom, stop acting the maggot and get ye gone.
All right, Gwen.
I'm toasting Councilman Quentin Lucas and the 6 co-sponsors, Jermaine Reed, Lee Barnes, Alicia Kennedy, Heather Hall, Catherine Shields, and Teresa Lohr for taking a courageous and much-needed stand for tax incentive reform. For years, the City Council has been overly generous in diverting revenues from taxing jurisdictions to wealthy developers. I commend Lucas for his tenacity and collaborative efforts to get his tax incentive reform ordinance passed out of committee yesterday with a recommendation of due pass to the City Council. Now we look forward to a victory for this ordinance.
And finally, here's a roast to Evan McMullin, to which you will say who, and that who is why there's a roast. In August, McMullin announced he's running an independent campaign for the White House, hoping to attract GOP voters repelled by Donald Trump. Well, Election Day is about 2 months away. Few voters know who he is or what he represents. Now, McMullin once worked for the CIA, and I bet he was really good at his job because look how he's managed to keep his campaign a secret. And that's Ruckus for this week. We're back next Thursday at 7. Now for the Ruckettes and the crew, I'm Mike Shannon saying thanks very much for watching and good night.
Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by Fred and Lou Hartwig and viewers like you. Thank you.